In the air, a plane carrying 81 people crashing in the mountains of Colombia. Officials say there were electrical problems reported from on board the plane before declaring an emergency. Dozens are dead, but we are told miraculously a few may have survived. That plane carrying a Brazilian soccer team on its way to a tournament. Much more on this breaking story inside of America's Newsroom today. First, however, the price is apparently right for Donald Trump. Mr. Trump selecting hardened Obamacare critic Tom Price to run his Health and Human Services Department. As we say, good morning. I'm Bill Hemmer. It's pollen, by the way. Pollen.
Mold,
it's 60 degrees.
Fall.
I mean, it's almost
ridiculous
right.
How warm it is, right? You need a good frost to get rid of all
Flush
this.
it out.
So anyway, I'll take over from here.
Please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. So Mr. Donald Trump appears to be doubling down on his promise to repeal Obamacare by nominating this person, Tom Price, who is indeed a staunch opponent of President Obama's signature legislation. Watch this.
Ever since President Obama and the Democrat-led Congress passed Obamacare 6 years ago, the law's failures have been piling up. Premiums and deductibles going through the roof, patients losing their doctors, millions of people getting insurance cancellation notices in the mail. This is ridiculous, and the American people should not have to put up with it.
So he will have Obamacare in the crosshairs. In the meantime, all eyes on the Secretary of State position as Mr. Trump will meet again tonight with Mitt Romney, this time over dinner.
Over dinner. Very interesting. So Peter Ducey is our man over at Trump Tower today. So Peter, let's start with the HHS pick first. What do we know about Tom Price?
Martha, it sounds like Price is going to be the point person for the replace part of repeal and replace once Obamacare starts to get dismantled at the beginning of next year. The president-elect said in a statement about this, quote, "He is exceptionally qualified to shepherd our commitment to repeal and replace Obamacare and bring affordable and accessible health care to every American." With that said, there wasn't anything about the Affordable Care Act in the statement that Congressman Price put out through his 6th Congressional District of Georgia press office. He spoke in more general terms, not nearly as specific as the highest-ranking Democrat in Congress come January, Senator Chuck Schumer, who's already out with some words accusing the orthopedic surgeon-turned-Republican lawmaker of being too extreme to work at HHS. Schumer says this: Congressman Price has proven to be far out of the mainstream of what Americans want when it comes to Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, and Planned Parenthood. And this was not the only cabinet-level announcement that we expect today. Spokesman Jason Miller said on Fox Business in the last hour that today the president-elect also intends to nominate a transportation secretary, Martha.
All right, we will speak with him shortly as well. So there's a dinner date this evening between Donald Trump and Governor Mitt Romney. What do we expect out of that, Peter?
It's interesting the whole way that this is played out because, for one thing, Martha, it is very hard to get invited back to see the president-elect. Our Fox News Brain Room looked at the guest lists, and according to them, Rudy Giuliani is the only other job seeker to see Mr. Trump more than once since the election. Mitt Romney joins him on an exclusive list. This Romney meeting is also over dinner. That is very uncommon for the Trump transition process. That's going to be the headline today. Yesterday's headliner was the retired General David Petraeus, who explained how the interview process works and who did not dismiss the possibility of joining the Trump team if he's asked.
He basically walked us around the world, showed a great grasp of a variety of the challenges that are out there and some of the opportunities as well. So, very good conversation, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Also on the guest list today, Senator Bob Corker, Republican from Tennessee. He is the Senate Foreign Relations Committee chairman, and he is one of the only Republicans from Congress who campaigned alongside Donald Trump this summer when many were hesitant to.
Yeah, a lot of buzz surrounding him as well. Peter, thank you very much.
Maybe a Trump steak. I mean, just saying. Right? Well done.
Oh, my gosh.
Here more is Steve Hayes, senior writer, Weekly Standard, Fox News contributor. Steve, good morning to you.
Morning, Bill.
Tom Price, this nomination makes it clear that Obamacare will be a top target. Agreed?
Absolutely. Tom Price has staked his reputation on that. He knows this issue arguably better than just about anybody in Congress. He, as you said, is a former doctor. Having spoken to him repeatedly about Obamacare and the problems of it, over the years. I can tell you that among the members of Congress that I've talked about this issue with, Tom Price knows the details of this really better than just about anybody. If you talk to him about replacement plans, he's put forward one of his own. He's been pushing Republicans in the direction of offering a replacement plan, which some in the party have been reluctant to do. So he is, in many ways, the perfect person for Donald Trump to pick to shepherd this repeal and replace through.
All right, let's talk about dinner later tonight. You heard Kellyanne Conway on Sunday, and you heard Newt Gingrich with Sean Hannity when he said this about Mitt Romney. Watch.
It'll be a huge mistake to betray that base on behalf of somebody who, this is not like team of rivals. There was nobody in Lincoln's cabinet who was a bitter, unending opponent all the way through the general election. No one.
Right.
So this is a totally phony comparison.
So then what does Trump do, Steve? Take a guess.
Well, I don't. It's hard to know what Trump is going to do. Clearly, Donald Trump is interested enough in Mitt Romney as Secretary of State to have him back and to have him for this dinner. Some people have speculated that he's just trying to humiliate Mitt Romney for having opposed him so aggressively during the primaries and then during the general election as well. I think it's more than that. I think Trump. There's part of Trump that would like to pit Mitt Romney, looking back at the Obama administration on a model, having former nominees, presidential nominees, serve as the face of the country to the world, like Hillary Clinton and John Kerry have done. I think the Trump team wants Mitt Romney to apologize or at least appear contrite. I think they've made that pretty clear both in public and in private conversations. The question, it seems to me, is whether there's sort of a happy medium. Can Mitt Romney say something that sort of steps back a little bit from his criticism that he made of Donald Trump during the primaries, during the general election, but not go so far as to apologize or say that he didn't mean what he said?
Well, my sense is you can say a lot of this in a phone call. You don't need a second meeting, so something's up, and what that is, we wait to hear. Steve, thank you. Stephen Hayes there in Washington, D.C. Thank you. Martha?
So how about this? The vote count is finally over a couple of weeks after the election in the state of Michigan. The state officials there have certified Donald Trump is the winner, and that takes the state's 16 electoral votes into his column. Mr. Trump defeated Clinton in the traditionally blue state by just over 11,000 votes in the end. The president-elect tweeting, "The great state of Michigan was just certified as a Trump win, giving all our Make America Great Again supporters another victory," and it brings him, as he points out here, to 306 electoral votes. There's the shakeout for the Electoral College in the election. 232 for Hillary Clinton, 306 for Donald Trump. The president-elect also retweeting a frenzy last night, calling out media coverage of the recount in Wisconsin. This is quite an interesting political tale going on here. So coming up in the next hour, we will speak with Trump's Transition Communications Director, Jason Miller, about that and Mr. Trump's cabinet picks so far. We'll also talk to Jill Stein, who initiated that, or most people think initiated that. Some people think Hillary Clinton may be behind it as well. So we're going to get to the bottom of that.
Lots to talk about. That blue wall has been bulldozed.
It's fascinating.
Pennsylvania,
the story of the election.
Michigan, Wisconsin. Wow. 8 minutes past the hour.
So we are also learning some new details about the apparent lone wolf terrorist attack at Ohio State University that we watched unfold live here yesterday morning. Abdul Razak Ali Artan plowed into several people, first with his car, climbed out of his car and began going after people with a butcher's knife. Remember, initially we thought it was a shooting that was playing out at the Ohio State University, but authorities are now looking into his Facebook posts where he reportedly ranted about treatment of Muslims around the world. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge looking into all of this, of course, from Washington for us this morning. Catherine, good morning.
Well, thank you, Martha. Fox News confirming in the last hour that there was a reference to the American-born cleric Anwar al-Awlaki in the suspect's social media postings, referring to the cleric as a hero. This is significant, and we're told deeply concerning for investigators because it's another piece of evidence suggesting Artan was self-radicalized. Fox's ongoing reporting has shown that al-Awlaki, who was killed in a 2011 CIA drone strike, is the father of the digital jihad, and his radical teachings are consumed by those who follow al-Qaeda as well as ISIS. Artan drove a car into a crowd of students and then got out wielding a knife. Both of these methods were recently promoted by ISIS online, and investigators were told are working on the premise that it was not a coincidence. At last night's vigil, students described the moment it went down.
Noise. I heard a loud bang, and I saw a huge cloud of like dust. People were like really running and like really screaming. I'm like, oh, this is like something's going on. And then I heard the 3 gunshots, and from about that same area.
2 law enforcement sources also tell Fox News that Artan came into the United States as a Somali refugee and was granted status as a legal permanent resident. In August, Ohio State student newspaper The Lantern, and this is where the photo is from, ran an interview with Artan, who identified himself as a Muslim. He said he was looking for a place to pray openly and worried about how it would be received. We're also told this morning that there's no evidence he had help, and the FBI has possession right now of his electronics, and they're getting the necessary authorities to look through them for any of his social media activity and what he was reading online. Martha.
Yeah, disturbing. Catherine, thank you.
A lot of questions now. Was this an isolated matter or another lone wolf attack? We'll talk to a member of the Senate Homeland Security Committee about what we are learning today out of Columbus, Ohio. Plus, there's this today.
Would like to share with you today the officer's name who we all owe a debt of gratitude to. He did a fabulous job today. He is a 28-year-old officer named Alan Harujko.
He's being called the good guy with a gun in this situation, being hailed as a hero for his quick thinking that prevented an even bigger tragedy in Columbus. Also,
Fox News alert on some fast-moving wildfires threatening an iconic amusement park. There were hundreds of acres burning this morning in eastern Tennessee. The Great Smoky Mountains are on fire, and now the mandatory evacuations are being ordered at Dollywood and elsewhere. Back on that story live in Tennessee when we continue.
So some new information coming in about the heroic police officer who took down the Ohio State University attacker. Campus police officer Alan Harujko responded to the scene after a student took his car and plowed it into a number of pedestrians. Got out, started stabbing people with a butcher knife. The officer shot and killed the suspect, potentially saving multiple other lives who were on the streets in that area. The president of the university thanked the officer for his service, who has only been with the force less than 2 years.
Wow, remarkable. Was he inspired by ISIS? Was he radicalized? Republican Senator James Lankford sits on the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee as well. Senator, good morning to you, and thank you for your time. Based on what you're hearing, what do you think?
It shows all the patterns of ISIS in the past several years, that we've seen individuals that are living within the Muslim community that right before they carry out some act of violence, they post on their Facebook page or some sort of online media a pledge of connection either to ISIS or Anwar al-Awlaki, and then carry out some act of violence that was not seen before. I mean, the striking thing is this individual a year ago was featured in an article in the OSU student newspaper saying that he was concerned about how the media portrayed Muslims and that he was afraid to pray in public because of the media portrayal, and then a year later to be able to carry out this kind of act of violence on campus. We don't know a lot about the journey, what moved him a year ago to now, but we do need to know more about that so that we can see the signs better and so that we can engage with the Muslim community better. You
don't know when they're going to flip, but here are the strong clues, okay? You ready? Apparently, 3 minutes before he drove that Honda Civic on the curb, he filed this on Facebook. Quote, "I can't take it anymore. America, stop interfering with other countries, especially the Muslim Ummah," which could be translated as community. "We are not weak. We are not weak. Remember that." Another one, Facebook. "If you want us Muslims to stop carrying lone wolf attacks, then make peace. We will not let you sleep unless you give peace to the Muslims," end quote. Those are strong clues, Senator.
Those are strong clues, but we don't know what the clues were right before that. This is the reason we've got to be able to reach out to the Muslim community and be able to hear from them. Why did they not report this? What did they not see? What happened in the process? And we don't know the journey here between it, but this is an individual that anyone can practice whatever faith they choose to practice in America. Every faith is open to practice, but this person turned violent, and he turned violent in a hurry, what the FBI calls going from flash to bang in a hurry and trying to figure out. So we've got to find out what signs were missed in this process and how do we stop this in the days ahead. And this is one of the most difficult cases we've seen in a while.
Yeah, the postings just a few minutes before it happens, they learn as they go. You know, he would probably not file this a week in advance because somebody might be on his tail. Do you have confirmation that he had praised Anwar al-Awlaki, the American-born killed in Yemen?
We have reports of that, and we're going to get final confirmation. It is my suspicion that that is where this comes from. A lot of these individuals that we've seen of late, whether that would be from the attack that happened in Orlando or in San Bernardino or others. We're watching some of the Anwar al-Awlaki videos online, and we're being radicalized in their own homes watching some of these videos and then slowly turned over. But again, there are other signs that have got to be there. We've got to know from the Muslim community how this is happening and why it continues to happen this way, and individuals facing this inspiration. Other individuals are persecuted. Other individuals have difficult times. They're not turning into this kind of violence on it. We've got to find out why this is happening.
Fair point, and point well taken. ISIS has been encouraging followers to carry out attacks like we saw near Bastille Day in mid-July in France, Nice, France.
That's correct. So
apparently, just one more point. There's another terror group online that was encouraging followers to attack people with a knife. And again, there are 2 more clues. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, if you go back to the al-Qaeda model, in the past, al-Qaeda was trying to gather people together and be able to organize and plan large-scale attacks. ISIS, in the current structure right now of happening with people being radicalized, is not trying to gather and train. It's trying to say, if you think like us, you should kill like us. Here are a group of people, just go kill them and tell them you're with us. And that's a very different model, and that is a self-radicalized lone wolf type model that even this person allegedly put up before he started attacking people, to say we're going to be lone wolves and you're not going to have peace. That is the challenge that we face.
We are waiting for more information out of Columbus today. As we await that from the university, you're on a tear right now about federal spending. Bit of a difficult turn right now, but you put out a report called Federal Fumbles, 100 Ways the Government Dropped the Ball. We have seen shrimp on a treadmill for years right now. You know, what do you find that is so incestuous with the way Washington uses money? And I would further say you offer solutions for the examples that you can solve some of these problems. Right. Give us the best case, Senator.
Absolutely, we can solve these issues. And what I tried to bring forward is not just that we have overspending, we have wrong spending, and we have grants out of control, and we have regulators that are out of control. And we're not identifying all of them. We took 100 examples. It's not intended to be comprehensive of all the issues, but to say we've got examples in all these different agencies and entities. The missing element is oversight. The missing element is clear boundaries. The missing element is there's no way to be able to handle duplication in government still. Real oversight on the grant process. So we've got all those. So we lay out, here's how to solve it. Here's what we're facing, whether that be for decades now that we've had problems with what's called improper payments in Medicaid. The USDA continues to see improper payments in the food stamp SNAP program over and over again. We have out of control regulators. They're trying to manage convenience stores and what they can sell and what they can't sell in it, or whether it be the study that NIH put out to be able to study how children's brain develops by allowing people to sneeze on food before they give it to 5-year-olds to see if they'll still eat it. All these things have a common ingredient. We've got to deal with it.
It's an incredible list. Senator, thank you for your time. James Lankford, the Republican from Oklahoma. Thank you, sir, again. 21 past.
Awful story here. A deadly plane crash in Colombia. The chartered plane was taking the Brazilian soccer team to an important tournament. Many have been lost in this crash. There are a handful of survivors, miraculously, when you look at that wreckage. The latest on this tragic crash.
Also, a car spinning out of control, the driver unconscious behind the wheel. A dramatic effort to try and stop the car and save the man inside. From Iraq, we get this on ISIS reportedly killing civilians who will not cooperate in Mosul. A U.S. human rights spokesperson said the terror army is killing those who will not allow rockets and snipers inside their homes or anyone they suspect leaking information and trying to flee. Meanwhile, the prime minister says that ISIS fighters lack the courage to put up long-term resistance, saying, quote, the success of liberating a huge area indicates that Daesh does not have the guts now or the motivation to fight as they were doing before. So, yes, I think the operation is on track, and I'm hopeful that we liberate the city before the end of the year, end quote. Going to be a big job if they do that. The battle to retake Iraq's second largest town started about 6 weeks ago. The prime minister did not say how many Iraqi troops have been killed since the operation first began.
The Brazilian president declaring 3 days of national mourning after a plane carrying the Brazilian soccer team crashed in Colombia. 81 people were on board this flight. A handful have survived. The number's still unclear at this point, but the mourning is deep in the country of Brazil. The team was on their way to a tournament final. They were taking off from Sao Paulo yesterday, stopping in Bolivia before crashing on their way to an airport near Medellin in Colombia. Phil Keating is live in Miami with more on this. So, Phil, any preliminary word on what caused this plane to go down?
Well, we know this, Martha. Around 10 p.m. last night, the pilots of this charter plane declared an electrical emergency, and shortly thereafter, almost immediately, all contact was lost. Just a horrible scene in the Colombian mountainside. It was in the darkness as rescuers worked through the night, struggling to find survivors. 76 people confirmed dead. Very difficult just to get to the plane. Muddy roads and the rain was pouring down. So after finding 5 survivors initially, the search had to actually stop and wait for morning. The charter plane carrying the Chapecoense Soccer Club had departed Santa Cruz, Bolivia, and was almost to the Medellin, Colombia airport when it went down. The entire soccer team was on board this plane. At the hospital, where the few survivors were taken, a frantic scene to save their lives after such a heavy impact into the side of that mountain. The Medellin mayor saying, quote, "What was supposed to be a celebration has turned into a tragedy." Martha.
All right, more to come. Phil, thank you very much.
So Mr. Trump now faced with a major decision as he's set to meet for a second time with one of his harshest Republican critics. Could Mr. Trump take Mitt Romney as his Secretary of State? We're back on that story in a moment.
And mandatory evacuations are underway as wildfires rage in Tennessee, threatening Dolly Parton's beloved theme park. The singer issuing her own early warning.
This extended drought has resulted in high wildfire danger. As dry as it is, please help firefighters avoid wildfires.
Tennessee, the National Guard will help as wildfires rage out of control in that state. 100 homes have been damaged or destroyed so far, and that number continues to climb, including a 16-story hotel. Mandatory evacuations are in effect, including around the singer Dolly Parton's iconic theme park.
Hold off on burning leaves, tie up chains on trailers to avoid sparks, don't park vehicles on dry grass. Why, even a cozy campfire can spark a wildfire. Why don't you help firefighters keep the Smokies beautiful, right, Smokey? Yes.
There is a lot of concern over this now, and for good reason. Jonathan Seri live in the story now. How bad is it, Jonathan?
It is bad. Up to this point, firefighters had really kept these blazes out in wilderness areas, but now they're threatening populated areas. And the weather's been a mixed blessing. It's raining today throughout much of the southeast, which should bring some long-term relief to this drought-stricken region. But before the rain arrived, heavy winds spread the flames even further, and that is threatening some popular tourist destinations, including Pigeon Forge, home to the Dollywood theme park, and also neighboring Gatlinburg, where emergency management officials estimate more than 14,000 residents and visitors have been evacuated from that city alone.
Well, we were in our cabin and preparing supper, and had a knock at the door, and it was a policeman, and said that he would recommend that we leave because the fire was getting close to where the cabin was. So we got all our stuff that we could gather up and put it in the truck and came down here. He recommended that we come here.
According to preliminary damage estimates, hundreds of structures are lost, including vacation cabins. There are currently no reports of fatalities. However, officials do report several people have suffered burns, and some of those burns are reported to be serious. And Bill, today, emergency management officials are urging residents and visitors in that area to limit their non-emergency use of cell phones. They want to free up the airwaves for firefighters and first responders to use during this very tense situation.
I mean, the graphics, the video, I mean, it's certainly graphic, the pictures we're seeing. There's a weather system moving in. It's large. It's going to drop a lot of rain. How much will that help, do they say?
Yeah, long term it's going to help because this region has been suffering from the worst drought in a decade. And so long term that's going to help dry things up. The problem is these heavy winds accompanying the rains. The heaviest winds we experienced yesterday and overnight. But even today, as more showers are expected to move into the Gatlinburg area this afternoon, there are going to be gusts around 15 miles an hour. And that alone is still enough to spread the flames a little further further. So firefighters say that they're not in the clear just yet. They have their work cut out for them, and even after they save these populated areas, they expect to be fighting fires in the southeast region through mid-December.
Holy cow. A couple more weeks. Jonathan Seri, thank you on that story today.
Certainly.
Thanks.
President-elect Donald Trump set to have a private dinner meeting with Mitt Romney tonight. The second sit-down between the two. Most people do not get a second meeting we have seen in this transition process. So the president-elect is trying to settle on a Secretary of State. Romney is one of several contenders said to be up for the job, and Mr. Trump is taking seriously this decision despite very public opposition from some of his top advisors to the idea of Romney as Secretary of State. Let's bring in Guy Benson, political editor for townhall.com. And Julie Roginski, a Democratic strategist. Both are Fox News contributors. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning.
We understand that Transportation Secretary is expected to be announced at noon today, so we'll have more on that coming up. But the Secretary of State spot is the one that's getting all the heat and all the attention. Guy, how do you think this shakes out?
Well, for now, Martha, it seems like one of two things is happening. Either Mitt Romney genuinely is one of the top frontrunners for the job, if not the frontrunner, or Trump's loyalists are sort of setting him up for the spike on Mitt Romney as retribution, if you will, for Romney's vocal role as a never-Trumper throughout the entire campaign. It seems like either Romney is in very good position to get this job, or Trump's getting ready to sort of publicly snub and humiliate him as a punishment, more or less, for a year plus of opposition.
I mean, that would be a highly, vindictive sort of move. But we've seen so many things that no one expects in the course of this electoral process. So I guess it's a possibility that may be what he's up to. But it does seem, according to what we've heard, that Donald Trump is seriously considering Mitt Romney for that spot. Julie, what do you make of this?
Well, first, I agree with everything that Guy said. It is vindictive, but we've seen if past this predicate. This is kind of out of the same playbook that he did with Chris Christie, where he dangled him for quite a bit, and then at the end of the day, if Christie gets anything at all, it's not going to be anything that he thought he was getting. So Guy's theory is very possible. I actually floated the same theory on Friday. Look, Mitt Romney is out of a different foreign policy playbook than Donald Trump. Let's put aside their personal disagreements and talk about the fact that on policy, Mitt Romney advocates a much more muscular interventionist policy than Donald Trump has, although Donald Trump has been somewhat all over the map in terms of what he advocates during the course of the campaign. So first and foremost, I think it's a question of whether the Romney worldview and the Trump worldview align, and that may be something that they're discussing as well. It may be possible that Mitt Romney doesn't want to join an administration that bends over backwards to placate Putin when he said that Russia was the greatest geopolitical threat facing the world, and he was right about that. It's something that's very out of sync and out of step with what the president-elect believes. So that may also be part of the question.
Well, no doubt some of that will be the subject of this dinner meeting that they're having, which is, somewhat unusual, Guy, based on what we've seen. Yeah. What do you think the significance is of the dinner invitation for Mitt Romney?
Well, it could be that sign of seriousness that we were just talking about. And I think Julie's point is well taken about, well, gosh, do their worldviews really align sufficiently for Romney to be able to do this job in this capacity under President Trump. But that could be the subject of discussion at dinner tonight. We may not see eye to eye on every single issue, but can I count on you, this is Trump, can I count on you, Governor Romney, if I select you as Secretary of State to carry out my foreign policy based on my vision? I think that's a very important conversation to have. And one other very quick point I would say, from a conservative perspective, as we're watching this cabinet shape up, the announcement today at HHS, Tom Price, sensationally good pick by Donald Trump. I think that's something that the center-right collectively can celebrate.
Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama weren't exactly cozy, Julie, when he picked her to be his Secretary of State. It's also a job that, gets you out of the mix, really. I mean, it sends you out of the White House, around the world, which is an interesting dynamic for a president and the Secretary of State. It's not somebody who's underfoot.
Yeah, I mean, the real question is for Mitt Romney, why would he want this job if he espouses a very particular worldview which is not aligned with Donald Trump? Is he willing to subsume that worldview in the service of a president whom he never supported in the first place? And that's a legitimate question, because ultimately this is not a job that Mitt Romney necessarily needs. If he wants to serve the nation, and he feels that serving the nation would be to subsume his own views on what is best for our foreign policy, in the service of Donald Trump, which is what every Secretary of State must do, then obviously that's something he wants to do. But it's not clear to me that that's something that's in Governor Romney's own interest to do.
It remains to be seen if their views are that far apart, because we know that one thing that Donald Trump focuses on is not giving away what he would do. So he may have been reaching out to bring Putin sort of into the conversation and say he's open to talking to him, because he thinks that's the most effective way to keep Russia in line. I mean, that's highly possible. I want to get your thoughts, though, Guy, before we go, and if you have a thought on that, feel free to share it here as well, about Giuliani. Where does he stand in all of this?
That's a great question. I mean, it seemed like he was right up there with Romney for a long time, and we haven't heard his name all that much. Of course, he's in and out of Trump Tower. He seems to talk to Trump a lot of the time. So, again, I'm waiting to see whether or not this is really the Romney show or a head fake. Now, I would just say one other thing to the previous point. It's not like Mitt Romney has to agree with every single thing that Donald Trump thinks and then say, well, I'm just going to completely give up my worldview to serve the country. He would also have enormous influence on helping to shape American foreign policy from that position of Secretary of State. So the question is there a kumbaya moment that Mitt Romney and Donald Trump can get together and have, perhaps aided by Mike Pence, who is reportedly a big fan and sort of in the Romney camp on this one?
I mean, you can clearly see the lines here with Kellyanne Conway and perhaps Steve Bannon on the Giuliani side of all of this, and Reince Priebus and Mike Pence much more on the Mitt Romney side, it appears. So we'll see who wins in this battle. Fascinating to watch the team of rivals as it is formed. Julie and Guy, thank you very much. Good to see you both.
Thanks, Martha.
Also, as we mentioned, a recount effort officially underway in Wisconsin, but there is almost no chance it will change the outcome of the election. So why is it happening? We'll talk to Dr. Jill Stein, who's leading the drive behind the recount effort in Wisconsin.
And veterans take a stand. A college under fire for removing the American flag. We're going to speak with a local mayor who joined those vets, demanding that the Stars and Stripes be returned.
Fox News alert now from overseas. A pair of Iranian Navy ships coming within a mile of a U.S. naval carrier. One vessel apparently pointing a machine gun at a Navy helicopter. The latest on this and how President-elect Trump promised a deal with Iran during his campaign.
People are sick and tired of stupidity and deals, and look at Iran. Look at the Iran deal. They're sick and tired of the Iran deal.
On a highway in Australia, a man passed out behind the wheel of this SUV, doing backward donuts, out of control, happening with the SUV slamming into another truck, knocking the driver out. We're told two other motorists eventually managed to get the truck's door open and stop it. How did they do that? Wow, the driver said to be in critical condition, still in the hospital. Looks like they got lucky.
Scary, huh?
Wow. How do you get that door open?
I don't know. I mean, it's put their lives in danger getting out there, so good for them. All right, so here is what we've got coming up. Service workers at one of the country's busiest airports walking off the job. A strike starting today at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. That's a busy place, folks. It could have a large impact and a ripple effect across the United States. Matt Finn is live at O'Hare with more. So, Matt, how's it going there so far?
Well, good morning, Martha. So far, smooth sailing. If you're flying in or out of O'Hare this morning, no major interruptions, but that could change at any moment as we expect to see dozens, if not hundreds, of workers walk off the job and strike here at Chicago O'Hare's airport, all in the name of $15 an hour minimum pay. Now, these workers are baggage handlers, janitors, and the people who help passengers in wheelchairs. These workers have gone on strike before here at O'Hare with no major interruptions, but today could be a little bit different as workers are expected to strike at 20 airports around the country, including Dulles and Reagan International. It's called the Day of Disruption. This is all a part of that nationwide Fight for 15 movement, which began 4 years ago today at a McDonald's in New York City. Fast food workers going on strike, demanding $15 an hour. In fact, a short while ago, workers at a McDonald's here in Chicago walked off the job and are demonstrating as well. This movement, which began in the fast food industry, has now spread to industries nationwide, including the airlines and taxis. Martha?
So does it seem as if O'Hare is taking this whole thing a bit more seriously than some of the other airports, Matt?
Yeah, well, Martha, the hundreds of outraged workers here are non-union. However, they're being backed by a local chapter of a national union. And the strike here today has its roots in a 2011 decision by Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel to award a $99 million maintenance contract to a non-union firm. And that resulted in hundreds of unions' jobs lost here. And that has apparently led to some outrage. These employees now are fighting back for what they consider fair pay, $15 an hour. The minimum wage here in Chicago is currently $10.50. Martha?
All right, Matt, thank you.
More announcements today from the President-elect Donald Trump as he holds another round of meetings today at the Tower. We will speak with his communications director in a moment about what to expect. Jason Miller's coming up, top of the hour.
Brand new announcements from the transition team as President-elect Donald Trump adds to his cabinet while calling Mitt Romney back for a second meeting. This one is going to be a dinner this evening between these two very high-profile men, of course, and that will be part of the decision-making process for the Secretary of State position, which is probably the most high-profile that is under discussion at this moment. Welcome, everybody. Hour 2 now of America's Newsroom. I'm Martha McCallum.
And I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. Trump salad on the menu, of course, always is. Mr. Trump giving Mr. Romney a closer look with plans for a private dinner later tonight. Mitt Romney seen as a top contender along with Rudy Giuliani, General David Petraeus, but many Trump loyalists find it hard to forgive Romney's harsh and personal attacks during the campaign of 8 months ago.
He should understand that folks who are speaking out, whether that's Mike Huckabee or you or Kellyanne Conway or me, we're really speaking out on behalf of an amazing number of people who come up to us and tell us that they, or who email us and just say they cannot understand. And I think it'll be a huge mistake to betray that base on behalf of somebody who, this is not like Team of Rivals.
Jason Miller is communications director for the Trump transition team. Jason, good to see you this morning. So that's an easy job these days, right?
There's never a dull moment, but it's exciting.
Never a dull moment is right. So the big dinner tonight between Mitt Romney and Donald Trump. This is a second meeting. How's that going?
Well, the transition is going along great. As you saw this morning, we appointed or announced the president-elect plans to nominate Dr. Tom Price to be HHS secretary, Seema Verma to run CMS. So those two will really be the tag team, the dynamic duo, so to speak, for repealing and replacing Obamacare. We'll have another cabinet appointment announcement this afternoon. So stay tuned. That'll be coming probably later this afternoon.
The speculation is Elaine Chao on that. Can you confirm that?
So I can't confirm anything, but stay tuned. This afternoon we'll have some more exciting news.
Around noon you expect to make that announcement?
I think it'll be a little bit later in the afternoon. And so when the president-elect says go for it, then we'll be ready to go. And then, of course, tonight the president-elect is having dinner with Governor Romney. It'll be the second meeting. They met at Bedminster a little over a week or so ago. And one of the things to keep in mind is there are some folks who are coming in and meeting with the president-elect and the vice president-elect maybe have thoughts and ideas on the administration. Other folks who are coming in could actually be administration members or even cabinet picks. And I think the opportunity tonight with Governor Romney will be to just let the two men spend a little bit more time together. But ultimately, when this is all sorts out, it'll be the president-elect who makes his decision. And also, too, I mean, whoever he does pick at that Secretary of State position, I think is going to be someone who he really feels that he has a good bond with and shares his worldview. As Bill mentioned in the intro, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is someone who's could potentially join the administration in a high-level capacity. And so the president-elect is really putting together the best and the brightest. We've seen it from Nikki Haley to Dr. Tom Price to Mike Flynn. I mean, these are absolute all-stars.
It sounds like you're setting out a couple of different options. One is that Mitt Romney may be meeting with him for a position, but he might be meeting with him just as someone who could advise the administration. Is that true?
And there are, that's why I said, a number of folks that are coming in, maybe they're going to be an ally on the inside, actually joining the cabinet, and some folks might be an ally staying on the outside. And so ultimately that'll be the president-elect who makes that decision. But I think that's one of the great things that we've seen from his temperament and really his judgment following the election, is that he's trying to bring all these different viewpoints together and try to figure out how best to push forward.
But you also just said Rudy Giuliani could serve in some capacity. Are you opening the door there for potentially other other positions, maybe Homeland Security, perhaps something else for Rudy Giuliani?
Well, there's been no greater advocate and ally for this president than Rudy Giuliani on the campaign trail. He's been fantastic and great to have in the trenches with us. I'll leave those conversations to the mayor and the president-elect.
There's a story out this morning in the Washington Post that says that the president-elect doesn't like the fact that he's being pressured about Giuliani.
Well, if you're referring to the Kellyanne's comments from this weekend, actually I was on the phone with the president-elect last night, and Kellyanne was in his office meeting with him when I called, and we're all kind of sharing a laugh about a little bit of the overblown media speculation on that. But, Kellyanne approached the president-elect before she went on the shows this weekend and asked his permission to go out there and offer her viewpoint on things, and he said, sure, you've been a loyal, trusted aide, and you should be, feel free to share your opinion. But the most important thing is once the president-elect makes his decision, we're all on board with him, we're all on the same team, we're going to follow his lead.
But is there a division within the camps over there about Rudy Giuliani, who everybody sees, and we saw what Newt Gingrich said in the introduction there, who he says that's not a team of rivals. We're talking about a person who called him a con man, called him a phony. Would you expect that there would be, if Mitt Romney is chosen, some sort of apology or some sort of announcement on the part of Mitt Romney to say something along the lines of, I know him better now, we've had time to talk? Would that be something that would be expected before that could be announced, if indeed that's the way he decides to go?
Well, I'd describe the internal workings completely differently as far as how the transition is working, how the president-elect has put his team together. It really is a group with Chairman Priebus, who's coming in as the White House Chief of Staff, Steve Bannon, who's the senior strategist, White House advisor to the president, Kellyanne, who's a strong team member, and a number of other folks. Everyone really gets along well and is working together to put this government in place. And there's no internal divide or division. I think a lot of that's kind of overblown. And look, ultimately the decisions are going to be up to the president-elect, and we have full confidence
that much is clear.
He'll pick the right people.
And he has a lot on his plate and has been moving through these, I think, in a very timely manner, most people would say. But I do want to ask you about the tweets, because there was a period during the campaign where he seemed to have a lot more tweet discipline, shall we say. And that seems to have sort of gone out the window over the past few days. Is that a concern as a communications person for you?
Well, part of the reason why people love Donald Trump is the fact that he speaks his mind and that he's going to give it to you straight, that it's not coming through a filter, that it's not, poll tested and through, focus groups before, there aren't, a whole bunch of different things, calculations that have to go into every single word, because he's going to speak straightforward to people. I think that's a part of his appeal, and people are so tired of politicians, they want to hear someone give it to them straight. So when he has an opinion, and he has a comment that he wants to share, we're going to hear it.
And that's going to continue from the White House, it would appear, right?
Well, but here's the other thing, too, is this goes a couple of different directions. When we talk about repealing and replacing Obamacare, which is what Dr. Price and Seema Verma really spoke to today. When we talk about some of the other priorities, stopping illegal immigration, I mean, we're seeing these headlines, this terrible attack in Ohio yesterday, the need to go and truly make our country safe. This is a president who's not going to sit around and wait for advisors to tell him what to do. He's going to go do it himself.
That's very clear. Before I let you go, a thank you tour begins this Thursday in Cincinnati. Is that right?
Thank you tour will be coming up very shortly, and we'll have more details coming on that. But I think this will be a great way for the president-elect to go out there and let people know, how much he appreciates everything that they did. But most importantly, what people really want to see is what we're going to go and do for them. And that's a big part of what we're going to be talking about as we travel the country, is here's how we're going to make America great again.
He's not low energy.
No.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. Good to have you here as always. Bill?
Got a big Fox News alert right now. Take a look at this story and keep an eye on it. Evacuations have been ordered in the Great Smoky Mountain resort town of Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Wildfires closing in. They've already burned nearly 36 buildings. More are threatened at this hour. One visiting family said they had no idea about the danger until they got a knock on the door.
We were aware of the fires in the area, but we didn't know that they were anywhere close to where we were. Nobody told us, or anyway, he said they were about a half a mile away, and with the wind blowing like it was, we needed to leave.
Fire is also threatening the nearby town of Pigeon Forge and the Dollywood theme park. Firefighters hope the rain in the forecast is going to help a little bit with the flames, but about 500 acres plus burned already. Keep an eye on that story. Also this now, Another alert. Police are looking at whether or not the attack at Ohio State University is connected to terrorism. 11 people injured when a driver plowed a car over a curb and attacked people with a butcher knife. He's been identified as an 18-year-old Somali native shot and killed by a campus police officer. And the governor, John Kasich, praised that quick action.
Think about what this incident, what this tragedy could have meant. A man with a butcher knife and who knows what else. I don't know what else he may have. Think about driving a car into a bunch of people. Think if you were standing out there, what, the terrible stuff you would see.
So now the aftermath. Garrett Tenney live on campus in Columbus. And what more are we learning about the attacker? Let's start there.
Yeah, well, Bill, investigators tell us that there is growing evidence to suggest that the attacker, Abdul, he may have been self-radicalized before this attack yesterday morning. The latest indication of that comes from a Facebook post that investigators believe Artun made shortly before his attack yesterday morning. In that post, he refers to the American-born cleric Anwar al-Awlaki as a hero and condemns U.S. military action in Muslim countries. Now, as we often hear in the aftermath of these kinds of stories, neighbors of the Somali refugee say he was very nice and polite, and they are shocked that he would ever do this. In fact, from the outside, Artun's life looked very different 6 months ago. He was just graduating from Columbus State Community College with honors and was heading here to Ohio State. Now, investigators are contacting his family and friends, searching his social media presence as well as his electronic communications to determine what happened between then and now to change that. Now, we also have some good news this morning on the victims. There were 11 of them, students and a professor. 7 of them have been released from the hospital, 4 remaining, and we're told they are all in stable condition.
That campus cop is amazing, too. Wow. Thank you, Garrett Tenney, live on campus there. Thanks.
So President-elect Trump meeting yesterday with former CIA Director David Petraeus, the man credited with the surge that turned around the war in Iraq. Was that meeting, among other things, a stark reminder for the incoming commander-in-chief that we are still very much at war in that country? What will the Trump administration do about the war in Iraq? We will talk about that.
Also, an official recount underway in Wisconsin. All sides agree it won't make a difference, so why do it? We'll ask Green Party candidate Jill Stein, leading that charge. She is live to make her case today.
And Mr. Trump sending a strong message about the fate of Obamacare. Does his new HHS pick make sure that a repeal is in the works?
Trump knows what he needs to accomplish in order to be a successful president. He's got to do the things that he said he was going to do. He's got to repeal and replace Obamacare.
Details emerging in that deadly plane crash in Colombia. Of the 81 people on board, there might be a handful of survivors. The plane was carrying a Brazilian soccer team to a regional tournament. Apparently, electrical problems reported on board before an emergency was declared. Officials also say the plane may have run out of fuel, so more details as we get them, including new pictures near that mountainous crash scene that you're looking at right now here inside America's Newsroom.
President-elect Donald Trump continuing his search for a Secretary of State. His meeting with retired General David Petraeus sort of sparked some interest in whether he has been added to that list potentially, and how a Trump White House will handle the pressing issue of the continuing war in Iraq. General Petraeus, of course, led the surge there. He told reporters that the two had a good conversation.
Meeting went very well. Was with him for about an hour. He basically walked us around the world, showed a great grasp of a variety of the challenges that are out there and some of the opportunities as well. So, very good conversation, and we'll see where it goes from here. And I've got to teach this afternoon, so that's all I can do today.
Off to class. General Jack Keane is retired 4-star general, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and a Fox News contributor. General Keane, good to see you this morning. Welcome.
Good to see you, Martha.
So I just want to pull up a quote from Bill McGurn's piece in the Wall Street Journal today, and the piece is called "The War That Dare Not Speak Its Name." The president has largely worked to move the Iraq war to the back burner, but it is still very much a clear issue. And it says in this piece, perhaps the best thing that Mr. Trump could do in his inaugural address would be to acknowledge the reality Mr. Obama has tried to hide. After 8 years of an administration that prides itself on getting America out of wars, we are back in. General, what do you think about that?
Oh, I think he's right on the mark. And also, largely, I think it's one of the reasons why the President-elect Trump is talking to so many senior military leaders, because he has come to grips with something that President Obama truly never embraced, and that was the fact that the country was at war all during his 8 years of his administration, and we have been at war for 15 years. Mr. Trump clearly knows that, and he knows that the dangers out there and the risks are actually increasing, and so there's discussions here certainly taking place about Iraq, about Syria, about Afghanistan. These are where our soldiers are on the ground right now, where there is risk inherent to their lives, and as we know, painfully aware of, some of them have been killed just recently. So those are uppermost on his mind, I believe, in terms of going forward.
What about General Petraeus? You know him well. Do you see him having a role, and what role do you think would be best for him?
Well, I think Secretary of State is likely the best position for him. He's a warrior scholar. In that sense, I mean, near the top of his class at West Point, a PhD in international relations from Princeton. He's commanded 2 theaters of war in Iraq and Afghanistan, both of them successfully. Iraq decisively successfully, Afghanistan less so, I think because he was pulled out earlier than he should have been. But there's only been one other commander in the history of the nation that's ever done that, and that is Douglas MacArthur. And then he's commanded and directed a complex intelligence agency, the Central Intelligence Agency, that took him around the world, meeting foreign ministers, defense ministers, intelligence chiefs, heads of state, as did his 2 commands. I mean, he has an incredible network out there, and he's more than just a military practitioner. He certainly knows how to execute military campaigns and put them together. And that takes a certain strategic embracing of a campaign plan. But he also understands international relations. He understands the stability and the order of what we're trying to achieve as American leaders out there are trying to help stabilize the world. And I think the experience of all of that lends him well for this position. Certainly, Mr. Trump will make up his mind whether he's suitable or not.
Yeah, I know you respect him greatly. The issue of the classified information that he got in trouble for, should that be an issue here? It will be brought up if he is nominated for that position, you know.
Yeah, well, I think it should be brought up. I mean, it is a fact that my dear friend Dave Petraeus was charged with a misdemeanor crime, but he pled guilty to and paid a price for it. I think the question that's on the table is, given the years of experience that he has, and which I just outlined to you and our audience, does that issue in of itself nullify all those years of experience and deny him, again, making a contribution to public service? I think that is certainly something that Mr. Trump has to deal with, and the Senate would deal with as well. I suspect the reaction to that, they would consider it, they would understand it, they would ask an explanation from him about it, and I think they would probably likely support him.
General Keane, thank you. Always good to see you, sir.
And good talking to you, Martha.
So a lot of questions surrounding Mr. Trump's real estate empire as president. Conflict of interest, or how the rules might be different for a president. The judge, Anna Napolitano, takes that on in a moment.
And Jill Stein's recount effort might be getting more attention than her campaign did. So what is she out to prove? She joins us live.
We need to create a system voters can be confident in, especially after an election that was so divisive, where people felt, according to polls, 80% of voters said they were disgusted by the process of this election.
So Mr. Trump facing questions about how to handle his worldwide business empire while in office without breaking the law. Was that a possibility? Judge Anna Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst, here to answer a lot of these questions. And good day to you, counselor. So the founding fathers had this idea. They said, if you're going to be president, we have to forbid you from taking gifts potentially from kings abroad. Right. How did they handle it?
Well, there's a clause in the Constitution with a fancy phrase, the emoluments clause, and it says you can't accept a title or a gift from a foreign king, prince, or head of state. What it really means is you cannot operate the government in a way to benefit your own pocket. Now, we have never had a president of the United States with the wealth and the financial resources of Donald Trump. His financial resources are arguably well implanted in 30 foreign countries, and they're substantial resources. They are typically hotels, resorts, and golf courses. So we start with the basics.
Okay.
All the laws that prohibit self-dealing and prohibit conflicts of interest for everybody that works for the federal government, from a janitor to a four-star general, cover everyone except the president and the vice president.
Really?
So none of the laws that govern senators and members of Congress and members of the cabinet pertain to the president or to the vice president.
So let me give you an example. So you have a head of state that come to Washington, you're the president, he's staying at your hotel down the street. And is that a conflict of interest on its face?
That is not a conflict of interest on its face, because Donald Trump does not personally own the hotel as Donald Trump. Donald Trump owns shares of stock in the corporation that is one of the owners of the hotel. So the benefit to him is removed by several steps. The rent for that hotel room is not going directly into Donald Trump's pocket. So that gets him out of the emoluments clause problem.
You're characterizing this in the following broad sense. This could be a political problem, but not a legal problem.
Correct, because legally, he could be on the phone with the president of Brazil talking about a trade deal. I'm just making this up and say, by the way, my kids are trying to build a new Trump Tower in downtown Rio. Can you help them out? And the answer is there is nothing wrong with that legally, because the law that would prohibit other members of the government from doing that does not apply to the president.
So the suggestions that this whole Clinton Foundation deal would affect Trump are null and void, according to your explanation.
Correct, because Mrs. Clinton was the Secretary of State at the time. It is alleged she made decisions to benefit the foundation. She was covered by the rules that prohibit it, these rules that exempt the president. Now, does it look a little odd for the president to be cutting a trade deal for the country and a hotel deal for himself at the same time? Yes. Might it be better for him if he put all of his holdings into a blind trust, or even a not-so-blind trust where the world saw what was happening to it, but he couldn't control it? It would be a happier presidency for him, with fewer complaints and fewer investigations. But all these complaints and all these investigations will be political. They will not be legal.
Got it. Just one fine point on this. Rudy Giuliani has consistently made the argument that he would essentially be putting his kids out of business if he were to do a lot of what the other side suggests he does with his business dealings. Quickly now. Martha was just talking to General Jack Keane about David Petraeus.
Right.
If he is nominated to be the Secretary of State, and he's got that background baggage of the Paula Broadwell incident, would that be a problem for his confirmation?
Yes, there'd be several problems with the confirmation. At the time of his guilty plea, and I say this as a friend of General Petraeus, full disclosure, and a fan of General Petraeus, but at the time of his guilty plea, he admitted to taking federal government property. That would bar him from holding a federal office. So President Trump would need to pardon General Petraeus before the confirmation hearings began. He can do it with the stroke of a pen.
So you nominate him,
and you pardon him.
You put his name forward, and you say, after I am sworn in, I will pardon him before the confirmation hearing begins.
Yes. Yes, that's my advice.
Has that ever been done?
No, that has never been done. Presidents usually pardon at the end of their term because these pardons are often controversial and they don't want to live with the controversy. But something tells me Donald Trump doesn't care about the controversy. If he wants somebody, he's going to get him in the cabinet.
That'd be remarkable.
Yes.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome, Bill.
See you soon.
Anytime.
Martha.
So President-elect Trump tapping a longtime Obamacare opponent to be his next Secretary of State of Health and Human Services, So is the writing on the wall for President Obama's signature law?
Also, veterans taking a stand in defense of the American flag removed from a college campus after students set the flag on fire in protest. A mayor who joined those veterans is our guest live to talk about this.
Stand up for something, but you don't need to take a flag down to do it. The flag of our United States of America.
Big announcement thus far today. President-elect Donald Trump has selected Georgia Congressman Tom Price to be his Health and Human Services Secretary. Price has been a vocal opponent of Obamacare since it passed in 2010. So does this mean the undoing of the health care law? Doug Schoen, former advisor to President Bill Clinton, Fox News contributor, and Brad Blakeman, former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. Gentlemen, good day to both of you.
Good morning.
I know Doug is a Democrat. You okay with this pick?
Well, I'm okay with the pick in terms of qualifications. I'm more worried about what's going to happen with the Affordable Care Act. I understand it'll be repealed, probably should be repealed, but what is going to come in its place? I know we have tax credits on one hand, private subsidies or public subsidies of insurance purchase for private individuals, as well as getting down the line, greater coverage for the high-risk uninsured, and indeed competition across state lines. All good ideas. How is it going to work to make sure we don't lose the essence of what Obamacare tried to do? Expand coverage and hold down costs.
I want to make sure I heard you correctly. It should be repealed. You're saying that, right?
I've been saying that for many years. It's not worked. I say that as a bipartisan Democrat, but the principles it embodied, I feel very strongly need to be included.
Brad, he took Tom Price for a reason. What do you think of the pick on his face?
I think the Price is right for this job on numerous levels. He's a doctor, he's a legislator, and he knows the law inside and out. He was the victim of it passing as a congressperson. He knows the law probably better than anybody on the Hill. And I believe he's probably the only person who's probably read the bill in its entirety and understands its complications. So repeal and replace, perfect. I think my prediction is that Secretary Price will be one of the most consequential secretaries of a Trump administration.
Wow.
Because the most important job is repealing and replacing Obamacare, also dealing with entitlements, Medicare and Medicaid. So in addition to keeping our country safe, we've got to keep our country healthy.
Orthopedic surgeon before I went to Congress. Few of the ideas, and apparently this was proposed about a year ago, something the president clearly rejected. Among the proposed cuts would be Medicaid expansion, middle-class subsidies for private policies, tax penalties for refusing coverage. Doug, does that fit with what you just talked about?
It does, but I'm concerned that Medicaid expansion is something that may be necessary. I'm concerned that subsidies that the middle class need might disappear. But that being said, let me be clear. Obamacare is not working. The principles behind it, holding down cost and expanding coverage, are ones we've got to maintain. I hope the Price appointment and the legislation that follows accomplishes that goal, keeps pre-existing conditions and as includable in 26-year-olds up to 26.
Apparently both of those provisions are in that.
Which is very
26
good.
and under stays, and pre-existing conditions stay as well. Just want to read from FoxNews.com, Brad, get you to react. Price said Republicans want to address the real cost drivers of healthcare spikes, which are heavy regulatory burden, taxes, and lawsuits against medical professionals. I think as a baseline, you can probably start there.
Absolutely, and that was the problem with Obamacare. They jammed it through, and like Pelosi said, we have to pass it before we read it. Nobody read it. Bill, the 3,000-page bill, by incorporation by reference, is about another 30,000 pages. It was written by lobbyists and cobbled together. Nobody understood it, and it is probably one of the most unbelievable failures of legislation and leadership of a president in modern history. And Trump's going to reverse that. Look, we need a market-based system that is fair and equitable for all.
It's not going to be easy. I think we can all agree to that. Brad, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Doug, thanks to you as well.
Thank you.
Great.
Well, there is a Cold War underway of sorts in New York City over the chessboard. Russia versus Norway facing off in the World Chess Championship. The two players, including the defending champ, are locked in a dead heat right now. Tiebreakers are set for tomorrow. Laura Engel has more from our New York City newsroom. Hey, Laura, good morning.
Hi, Martha. You know, this tournament has been going on a nail-biting 3 weeks, which now heads to this last do-or-die match. The World Chess Championship match 2016 has gathered gathered crowds both here in Manhattan and online, with over 6 million people logging on, paying to watch these two master players go head-to-head for the world's top chess title. All right, so here are your players. 25-year-old Magnus Carlsen of Norway. He is the current champion and the highest-ranked player in the history of the game. He is being challenged by 26-year-old Sergei Karjakin of Russia. Now, both men are the two youngest ever to meet for the World Championship, which is taking place in the U.S. for the first time since 1999. Now, these two guys have been keeping the global chess community on edge with their quest to become the new or returning champion, as most of the 12 matches have ended in a draw, and there is another air of suspense going on, the political backdrop of these players. Now, Karjakin has been a vocal supporter of Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, which is where he was born. And the British newspaper The Telegraph reported that Mr. Carlsen had hired Microsoft Norway to protect him from Russian hackers who might have been able to give Mr. Karjakin an advantage by spying on his coaching preps over Skype. But Mr. Carlsen has said he wasn't worried about that, as yesterday's 12th game ended in a draw after 30 moves in 36 minutes, which was the shortest ever in a World Championship match. Carlsen talked about the anticipation level.
So lots of pieces were chopped off and we made a draw. That's about it. Well, I apologize to fans who might have wanted a longer game, but was not to be today.
Cool as a cucumber, and that will make tomorrow's the breaker of a real edge-of-your-seat event. The winner will walk away with a grand prize of at least $1.1 million in addition to the title, and it takes place right here in New York City. Martha.
It's fascinating. Great story. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
So there's a big push to recount the presidential votes in Wisconsin and beyond. All sides agreed that it will not change the outcome of anything. So why do it? And who is paying for it? We will ask the woman who is leading that effort. Green Party candidate Jill Stein joins us live next.
Would I stand up and call for a recount if there were doubts about the reliability or the security of the vote? And I always said yes, regardless of who is declared winner. The American people deserve to have a voting system we can trust.
Saying she will resign if Parliament comes up with a plan for the orderly transition of power. Massive protests taking place, calling for her to step down. More than 1 million sometimes in the streets. Lawmakers are preparing articles of impeachment. She's suspected of allowing a close friend to use their relationship in a corrupt influence peddling scheme. That's the accusation.
So it has been 3 weeks since Donald Trump won the presidency. There's a new push, though, underway to recount the votes in 3 key swing states. Green Party candidate Jill Stein is challenging results in Wisconsin, and she's working on efforts to do the same in Michigan and in Pennsylvania. Trump narrowly won all 3. Wisconsin officials dismissing accusations that their machines don't work, but approving the plans for a recount.
To say that we didn't count them correctly the first time, that it somehow there were illegal votes being counted was really inappropriate.
Joining me now is Dr. Jill Stein. Welcome. Good to have you with us this morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So he says there's no reason to think that they miscounted in any way in Wisconsin. He's standing by their system. So why go through this?
Well, this is not to implicate the election administrators who work very hard, but there is plenty of evidence that these machines do malfunction, and they are subject to machine error, to human error. We know 90,000 votes were uncounted, for example, in an election in Ohio in the past where we actually did a recount or where there was a court case. You cannot see the evidence unless you actually count the paper votes and find out. Otherwise, you just wouldn't know. And voters deserve the assurance that we can actually be confident in the vote.
But
we're not doing this to help one candidate or hurt another, but rather to help voters restore their confidence.
I think everyone could understand that if there was some evidence that pointed in a direction that there was a problem in this particular election in Wisconsin, for example, where you're talking about, and you have, even Hillary Clinton's lawyers saying that they haven't uncovered any actionable evidence that there was any hacking or any interference. So what's up?
In all the cases where machine error or human error has been discovered in the past, like these 90,000 votes that were uncounted in Ohio, you don't know about it in advance. You only know about it when you go back to look. So you wouldn't expect to see the evidence beforehand. But in this, in this moment where we come out of this very divisive and bitter election, where there is such widespread cynicism about government, about the economy, we owe it to voters to show that we have a voting system we can be confident in, not just by recounting now, but by building in
I just don't know that
safeguards.
there's any groundswell for this to happen outside of the people that that are funding you. Here's Hillary Clinton the morning after the election. 140,000 people who came out of the woodwork to fund this over the course of 4 days on a Thanksgiving weekend, and all we did was put up a website and a press release. So there's a huge groundswell, to take back our democracy and to start by assuring that we can have confidence that our votes are being counted. Does it strike you as odd that you've raised more money to do this, $6.4 million, than you did during the course of your whole campaign? And are you suspicious at all about where this money is coming from? Because a lot of people are.
Well, our donors will all be disclosed. There are almost 140,000 of them, last I checked. The average donation is $45. So, wherever these voters are coming from, these are regular people who are throwing in small donations so that we can have a government that is about us everyday people. There's not some giant funder here who's making this happen.
Are you sure?
Absolutely. Under campaign finance laws, we are limited to $2,700 to start with, and we have the numbers to show that 99.5% of the donors are all under $1,000, and the average donation is $45. So we will be disclosing those numbers. They have to be public record.
So you're confident that those numbers aren't being bundled by perhaps someone like George Soros? There's been some speculation that perhaps he's involved in this, and frankly, people who are saying, this is clearly something that has been engineered by the Clinton campaign, and they don't want to have their fingerprints all over this, and that they're sort of using you, in their words, to be the front person on this.
When I was asked throughout the campaign, and I often was, would I stand up and file for a recount if there was doubt about the credibility of the vote, I always said yes, and it was not contingent on who won. I was asked many times during the election, who did I favor? And it was very clear that I did not favor one candidate over the other, and I took incredible heat for standing my ground on that. So,
I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Just to go back to my previous question, can you certify that, to your knowledge, George Soros has not made any donations to this fund?
He might have made a $45 donation, or he could, at max, have made a $2,700 donation. But if he did, we would return it.
All right. What about the fact that Hillary Clinton came out the day after the election and she said, look, it is time to move on. There is no reason to question the outcome of this election. And in fact, while she was saying those words on that very day, this effort was beginning. Why would you negate what she has asked for, and why would her people get on board so quickly while she was out there saying exactly the opposite?
Right, and I don't agree with her. I don't agree that our priority here is simply a smooth transition of power if that power is not what shall we say, if that transition is not verified.
All right, so you disagree with her. Let me ask you, would you be doing the same thing if Donald Trump did not win? Would you be trying to do this recount in these 3 states if Hillary had won them?
Yes, absolutely. And if we find evidence of a systemic problem, then we will be pushing to expand this recount into other states and across the political spectrum.
All right. He is ahead 306 electoral votes, which we just put up to 232, and has just been certified the winner in Michigan as well. I think if there was, people who study these numbers closely who thought there was any chance that it would make a difference to do a recount, there'd be a lot more support perhaps for this effort. But you say that you feel confident that the money is coming from small donors. So,
absolutely.
Dr. Jill Stein.
And this is not about helping one candidate over another. This is about assuring the American people that, to start with, we have a voting system we can trust, because people do not trust where we are across the board. We got to start with our votes and being able to change our system.
Stein. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with more on America's Newsroom.
Coming up and happening now, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich will react to Jill Stein's comments moments ago that she's asking for a recount of votes for the good of the country. Plus, how high winds on a popular beach are now blamed for 8 deaths caused by a rare condition called thunderstorm asthma. A new term for all of us. We'll get into that. And a new take on the hit series Making a Murderer, as a new book raises questions about whether Stephen Avery was framed. It's all happening now.
Jenna, thanks. See you in 6 minutes. Protests rocking a college in Massachusetts after students took down the American flag and burned it. Dominic Sarno is the Democratic mayor of Springfield, Massachusetts, and he was part of a protest that was held on campus on Sunday this past week. Big turnout, sir, and good morning to you. The school has made a statement about why they took the flag down after the election. Have you been able to change the school's mind to put it back up?
Well, we're hopeful. I mean, they have this opportunity in the United States of America because of what veterans have done, the ultimate sacrifice, and what the flag stands for. We had a free and democratic process in a presidential election. They can protest if they'd like and have discussions, but they really should do that with the flag up. I mean, you have veterans coming back who've been maimed, injured, and hurt, and I think it's just very disrespectful. And I know this is a higher education, academia, but sometimes common sense needs to prevail here. No one is saying that they cannot protest. No one is saying that they cannot have a discussion. But this opportunity is because they are in the United States of America. If they were in some other country across the world, this would be handled very, very differently.
Yeah, I think they get that idea, or are they trying to create a safe space there?
Well, I don't know about that. I just think that they should show the proper respect to our veterans. And again, the veterans have given their blood, sweat, and tears in order for people to lead the lives they want to lead, whether it's good or bad or we agree with it. That opportunity is not available to them in other countries. Show the proper respect to the flag. Show the proper respect to our veterans. And many of our veterans come back and continue to serve as police officers and firefighters.
No question. The president of the school is Jonathan Lash. In a quick word, please, sir. Are you in contact with him? And yes or no, will he change his mind?
I have not been in direct contact with him. I am hopeful to be in some type of contact, and I'm hopeful that they would change and readjust their position on this and get the flag flying. You are in the United States of America, the greatest country in the world, and we are the beacon of hope, democracy, and their opportunities are because of our veterans.
Mayor, I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm well out of time, but thank you for your time. Back after this.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.